So welcome to Chamber Talk. My name is Andrew Gregson, and today we have our special guests, Dr. Bob Pletka and Assistant Supervisor of Business, Rob Coghlan. Welcome, gentlemen.
Thank you. We appreciate the invite.
Oh, no worries at all. So we just wanted to kick off, I suppose, a little bit with, do you mind giving us a brief introduction of Fullerton School District?
Sure. So first, I think we're known in our community as a school district and schools that are community focused. We want and we appreciate our parents' involvement, community engagement. We have 20 schools. We have about 12,000 students, and a pretty diverse group. We have about 25% of our students are Asian, about 50% Latino, and we have, in terms of diversity, in terms of socioeconomic backgrounds, and just a really rich community and a rich group of students that come in and bring so much.
And sorry, you're going to say something,
I was going to say, and sometimes there's some confusion. There's the Fullerton Elementary School District, and there's the Fullerton Joint Union High School District. And so Fullerton Elementary School District separate, and we are pre-K through 8th grade.
And how many schools do you have under the school district?
We have 20 schools. We have 3 junior highs, 2 kindergarten through 8th grade, and the rest 15 elementaries.
That's a lot of schools, isn't it?
It is. That's
a fair amount. That's a fair amount of schools. So, as there's both of you on today, so it'll take a little bit extra, but that's okay. It'll be quite interesting. So, Bob, do you mind sharing how you got your little journey up to the Fullerton School District?
Yeah, so I've been in education for about 32 years. I've been a superintendent for 17. But prior to that, I taught elementary. I taught 3rd and 5th grade. I taught junior high, 7th and 8th grade. I also did a lot of coaching. I coached soccer and swimming for high schools, and been in part of schools and school culture since I was 20 years old. And in fact, I've started out as an instructional aide. But in addition to that, more recently, I was a director of instruction and technology. I was a principal, assistant superintendent of Vista Unified School District. I was superintendent in Imperial Valley, specifically at El Centro. And then I heard from a good friend of mine that Fullerton had opened up. And Fullerton has always been known as an innovative, community-centered school district, and I wanted to be part of it.
That's really cool. And Rob, what's your story?
What's my story? So it's about my 35th year in education, a couple years longer. During that journey, I was a teacher, middle school teacher, math teacher out in Corona. I was an assistant principal, a principal, all in Corona. And also at the district office, I was a director in business. So I come to the business office via the school site, which is kind of unique. A lot of my people that hold my position don't come that way. It gives me a different perspective, gives me the perspective of being in the classroom, which is important. Been an assistant superintendent since 2008. I was in Anaheim Elementary School District up in West Covina, and I've been in Fullerton now since 2017, and just love it.
Now, just before we move in, because I want to talk about Measure N because it's so important, you want to, a pair of you, go through a little bit about the tiny house project? Because that was a pretty big deal, wasn't it?
Yeah, very exciting. We had a group of administrators who came through and said, we really just need to address this issue of homelessness, and yet at the same time empower our kids to make a difference and have an impact. And so we had some teachers came forward and said, hey, what could we do? And so in that kind of context, they said, what if one of our junior highs, if the woodshop class, if they built a tiny home? And they partnered up with a variety of new dimensions, with other contractors, and even our own folks that came in and volunteered. We have some folks with general contractors licenses that were help mentor the kids. And it took 1.5 years, almost 2 years, to build that tiny home. But I think the part that's most powerful was not just that they built a tiny home, but one of our families who is experiencing homelessness, who had no place to go, that would have been living in a car. We heard about that family, and that family moved into this tiny home, and they're living there now. Yeah. And they have a place because the kids stepped forward, our teachers, administrators, everybody came together, the whole community. In fact, $100,000 in donations from the community to help make this possible.
And what's the idea moving forward from that?
More tiny homes.
More tiny
More
homes.
tiny homes.
So, and trying to keep our woodshop class going and really helping our kids think about this possibility of this kind of career technical field, that this is something they could do future, but not just the future, that right now they can build these homes to help families that are experiencing this right now.
And make a difference in the lives of
others.
Others and people that they know in their own community.
Yeah.
It was amazing to see the kids look so proud of doing it.
Oh,
I think
they
should
were.
be. That was a lot of work. And if for those of you who are listening or watching this, if you haven't seen, you should look it up because it was an amazing project. It really was.
Just as a side note,
Sure.
Andrew, we had both boys and girls almost equally interested.
Right.
And so this is a field sometimes dominated, male dominated, and yet we had both boys and girls interested in making a difference.
Well, the strange thing is it makes sense, right? Starting with the younger kids, but the older kids now going to university or college, they're starting to change their mind too and go into these other fields that are more sort of like labor work type of thing, because there's a lot of money made to be if you're a skilled worker like that. It's good. So I wanted, obviously we're all here for a reason today. We wanted you to come in and share with us more about Measure N, really, and we wanted to sort of dive in about, if you could first off maybe share and explain a little bit about what Measure N really is.
So Measure N is really to provide an upgrade to the infrastructure, repair our facilities. And one of the things that I think people don't know about is we talk about modulars, or we talk about classrooms that were built they were intended to only last 20 to 30 years. So we had portable classrooms. So for example, at Beechwood, those classrooms were put there in the 1990s, portable classrooms that were only intended to last 20 to 30 years. And they're coming to the end of their lifespan. And so to be able to help aging classrooms like Beechwood, but actually those classrooms, those portables are all over our district. They are at the end of their life. And this measure is to help with that. And then even basic safety pieces and over, just like your homes, our homes, things change over time. And so we're required to meet these new safety requirements. And so we want to make sure that happens. But here's a couple other things that in the 1950s, when our classrooms were built, they weren't built for kids that were in preschool and transitional kinder who were 3 and 4 years old. The facilities weren't even meant for kids that young. Mm-hmm. And when you think of something like a sink and a child who's 3 years old being able to access it. Right. And so access, special ed students, we have these like chips where they have the playground equipment. They now have basically they call it pour and play, where our kids that are in wheelchairs, they can actually play because they'll be able to access those that equipment.
Well, so much has changed over these years, hasn't it?
Yeah.
So when you were mentioning there a little bit about some of the buildings, because we're going to talk a little bit in depth about it, is the building itself, is it a case of you're not just having to fix things like sinks might need lowering or things like that, but when you start messing around with the building itself, doesn't then other things come in play because we've got different laws and rules and regulations now? Yeah,
I can give one example, and I'm sure Rob can as well. But look, think of something like an air conditioning. And so it's on the roof. And we can repair it. At some point, that air conditioning will be at the end of its life. When we replace the air conditioning, we also, because of new codes, we have to replace the entire roof. And so think of all of the buildings for 20 schools. When those air conditionings go out, that entire roof will need to be replaced. And so that's just one example that when we make a change, we have to then also upgrade everything else associated with it.
And that's not cheap, is it?
No. And think of restrooms that were put in 70 years ago with different building codes and different restrictions. And so now when you go in there and you're going to replace the plumbing and the pipes, well, now you've opened things up. So now there's going to be more requirements that you have to do, not only in there, but also on other parts of your campus that you have to do. And again, these buildings they're great buildings. They're 70 years old, but they're not meant to last forever.
Well, talking about plumbing there, you're going to have to potentially reroute the piping and everything, because it's now new, so you got to dig up the whole ground.
Absolutely.
It's not just a building and patch and repair, is it? I mean, this is like serious, like ground up stuff.
Correct. And when the buildings were built, think of the electrical panels and the electrical capacity at a school, what was needed then and what's needed now. The technology and the things that use electricity just at your home. If you've ever done any work at your house, you maybe have a 100 amp panel. You have to replace it with a 200 amp panel because there's more things that require electricity. That's what we have to do too. So it's a lot of upgrading and bringing things up to modern standards.
Now, we're going to talk about this a little bit more in depth, but just so folks know, I'm going to ask you this, Rob, because you're sort of like in charge of business. You've had a bond before and that got paid off. You want to walk us through that?
Right. So the district had a bond back in 2002, and it was called Measure CC. It was for about $49 million. And that money came in and it made some repairs at the schools. That money's all gone. The good news is that bond will be paid off before Measure N, if and when Measure N passes, goes into effect. So there's no overlap. It's not as if the district has two loans out. And really that's what it is. It's the district taking out a loan to do this. If you were to do major repairs at your house, it would be difficult to do out of your paycheck. Sure. So if you had to put on a new roof, if you had to replace the plumbing, the electrical, the windows, the doors, all of that. And so it is a loan. So there won't be any overlap. How is it able to be that there's no overlap? The board, very conservative board, voted to refinance the previous interest rates on that old bond and save the taxpayers over $4.5 million in interest, which we were able to pay that off sooner. And so that's a big plus. When this new bond goes into effect, it's going to cost the average household about $4 to $5 more per month than what they're paying now for the old one. And so not a lot. Understand it's important. $4 and $5 a month is important. But when you think about the investment and really just giving these schools more life for another 50 plus years, it's important.
Giving back to the community, because it's all the kids in the town or the city that are living there. They're the ones who are going to be living through it, aren't they? Now, there's a little bit more to this, isn't there? So if Measure N doesn't pass, that also potentially stops you from getting other federal funding, right?
Right. Also on the ballot is Proposition 2, which is it's a state bond. It's $10 billion, billion with a B. We're not billion, but $10 billion with a B, of which $8.5 billion goes to K-12 education. So think of it as like a credit line, money that's available to school districts that have matching money to do projects. So for example, if we spend $10 million on a school, we can apply for those matching funds. We have in Fullerton about $150 million of matching funds that we would be eligible for. If Measure N doesn't pass and Proposition 2 does pass, which it looks like it's going to, we won't have the money to put up to match. And so in a sense, we're leaving and we're just not going to have $150 million to come to Fullerton.
In some ways, it's even worse, because what happens is if that state bond passes, instead of the tax dollars that we're giving here in Fullerton going to our schools, what will happen is the tax dollars for that state bond will go to other school districts in other communities. And so if we want to keep those tax dollars local, then the way to do that is to pass our local N bond.
Otherwise, it goes missing. You lose out.
Fullerton's paying the taxes, but not getting the benefit of it. And the good thing about Measure N is that's passed by the community. It needs 55% approval to pass, but that money stays local. It can't be taken away. It's not used for pensions. It's not used for salaries. There's an oversight committee that will oversee every expenditure to make sure that it's being spent the way that the voters approved it to be spent.
Just a piece too, when you think about that money being spent in our community, that also then helps our local businesses. That helps. We've really done a lot of good work with our local businesses, and we have almost 100 businesses through a Fullerton business network that we meet 3 times a year and help people to be able to bid on projects. And so think of not only do they spend those dollars with those contracts, but potentially every time they go to a gas station that's local, all of those local employees being able to do that. Every time they go to a restaurant, they go, out for lunch, all of those things, they're spending dollars in our community. And so this benefits really our parents, and it benefits our community and our businesses of Fullerton.
Which is actually a good point, because that means not everyone in the cities end up actually paying them more money, because if it's spread out in other areas, we do have a lot of visitors coming to Fullerton or people passing through Fullerton. So in fact, it just also means that their tax dollars also goes towards our kids, right?
Yes.
So it is a little more fair, and we'll talk about businesses in a minute. Both of you, I know, are extremely smart gentlemen, and you've really thought this through anyway. So why not share a few things that, when this does pass, let's be positive.
Yes, absolutely.
What are you going to spend it on? Where's it going to go? What are you looking at first? What is your strategic plan there?
Sure. So first, the goal is that every school will benefit. And I think was some of the initial concern. I think some people said, well, is it only going to go to specific schools? No, it's every school has needs. In fact, we did a facilities master plan to identify needs at every one of the schools. Those bond dollars will help every one of the schools, all 20. In addition to that, it is meant to upgrade the infrastructure. Again, things that we talked about before, electrical, plumbing, roofs, and in addition to those sorts of things, that access that's so important. We talk about those kids that are in preschool being able to access, kids that are in wheelchairs to be able to access the learning environments. Because when schools were built in the 50s and the 70s,
people were ADA compliant, were they?
They were not. So all of those things to really be able to be, more inclusive of our families and our community. And then we are really excited about a couple other things as well. So at our 2 junior highs, we'll be putting in it's a / gymnasium, performing arts, community center. And it can also, when we think, we just came out of the pandemic, emergencies happen, and have facilities that we could open up in case there is an emergency. In fact, when I was in El Centro, there was a bad earthquake, and the community was devastated. And we opened up our gym so that families could stay there as a part of that emergency. So that making sure that our facilities are available to our community is also a piece. But I will say, foundationally, this is about repairing and upgrading the infrastructure that is 70 years old.
And I would say that every year, it seems like it's happening more and more, we experience these heat waves, excessive heat waves. And with the gymnasiums that we're talking about, which we would now, Ladera Vista already has one, but Parks and Nicholas would have one, we can open those up to the community, in the evenings. Come on in. It's a place to get cool. That's it's very important. When we talk about the air conditioners, we're repairing them. Eventually, they are going to wear out.
Work eventually.
Well, they're not as efficient.
No.
You think of an old refrigerator, and so it actually, by putting in a newer, more modern air conditioner, it's going to save the general fund money on our electric bill.
Yeah.
And we have done some things along the way, though. We did put in solar. That helped. We also, using our COVID dollars, we improved the air quality in all of our classrooms by spending over $2 million on bipolar ionization units. It's a one-time expense, which took our air filters from like a MERV 9 all the way past a MERV 13, which improves the air quality, which improves attendance at school. When students come to school more, they learn more. And so using dollars that we can, one-time dollars, we'll continue to do that, but just making more efficient schools.
And also safety. So just one example of that. I mean, right now there's fire alarms and carbon monoxide filters and And yes, there is an alarm and it sounds off. Or, God forbid, there's an intruder. With some of the modern technologies around safety, we can actually pinpoint the place. So on a map, and our fire department and police department can have access to it. If there's a specific fire that started in a specific place, that information can be sent immediately to the fire department.
So they know ahead of time.
And in fact, we started to do some work with our police department. And so at some point, if there, again, God forbid, there was an intruder, the police can actually get a map of where that intruder is. It can actually even turn on the video to show. And so this idea of enhanced safety is something that we can provide as well.
Now, you brought up a great point there, Rob, and it's something that people don't often think about. And that is, with all these different improvements, especially when it comes to the buildings and obviously things like the air conditioning units and stuff like that, there's some huge cost savings. So, let's share a little bit about that, because obviously, if you're redoing walls, then you're insulating them. Suddenly, you're not cooling Fullerton, you're cooling the school, right? I mean, so we talk a little bit about savings as well, how important that is.
Right. And again, there are grants available. Again, they're matching grants, but you have to have the money to put up. And so with more efficient air conditioning units, replacing your windows just like you would in your house, dual pane windows, very important. We have a lot of our AC, our air conditioning ductwork is up on the roof on top. Well, just imagine now the heat's hitting that. We need to get those below the lid.
Sure.
And then lighting, and as restrictions and regulations become tougher, buying the old kind of lights, we are going to have to transition to LED lights in all of our classrooms, which is a great thing to do. However, you can't just pop in a new LED bulb. No. You have to replace the whole the ballast that it goes in.
And are there challenges to finding folks or the contractors who can do this type of work, or do you already have a list? Do you bid it out like cities do? How does that go about?
Right. And so we do bid out all of the work, and we have many contractors that come, and we take the lowest responsible bidder, which is great for the community. And so we are mindful of that. We're not just spending money, just spend, hand over fist, right? And so there is that, but there's a lot of work out there, and we haven't seen a shortage of contractors coming forward.
We've been very intentional about reaching out to our community businesses. There are a lot of people that want to do business with a school district and with a bond. I think that might even grow, but they don't know how.
Sure.
And so by giving these workshops there at the school district, meet people, develop this network, we're helping people to be able to bid on a job. And what does that mean? And there is state regulation around that we have to follow. And sometimes that scares away businesses that could benefit, and that we can benefit from, a local partner. And so by growing that, we're also growing the number of people that can be part of our community bond.
Now, you just brought up another good point, didn't you, about how people do that? And you were mentioning there that you're giving workshops out to contractors who can come and then learn how they're able to bid or what they're supposed to do. Is that the idea?
Correct. We do about 3 of these a year. Our last one was on September 13th. We've got another one coming up in January. It's put on by Mike McAdam, our director of purchasing, reprographics, contracts, and everything else.
And everything else.
Right? And it, when we first did it, I think at the first one, maybe we had 5 people.
Sure.
And then it just grew. And now we'll have 20, 30 people, all different vendors, all different businesses, everything from contractors to people that own flower shops, yoga, restaurants. How can they do business with Fullerton? And it's not just around measure and bond.
No.
We have over almost 2,000 employees in the district who, guess what? They like to send flowers to people. And so how can that flower shop tap into us to improve their business, and how can they do business? So Mike does a great job of walking them through it. And he says, if you still need help, call me. I'll walk you through it of what you need to do.
How do they find out about when these courses are on?
So what we do is through all of our, through our parents, we send it out to all 11,700 plus kids, their parents. We send it out there. I believe he shares it with the chamber also. He's starting to advertise it on our webpage, also in the newspaper, to say, hey, come on by. It's a workshop on how to do business with Fullerton.
And they can call the school district
school
and
office.
ask for Mike McAdams. And Mike,
And everybody knows Mike.
he does. He is.
So as education evolves, especially with technology becoming a fundamental part of it, what are the innovative programs that the district are going to be implementing to keep students more engaged and sort of future ready?
Sure. And I think part of what we need to do as educators is to help kids recognize the gifts and strengths in themselves, maybe even before they see it in themselves. And if we can kind of awaken that, their strength, their assets, their passion. And I also believe that every child and every person has something unique and special. And part of what we need to do as a school and as educators is to help kids find it. And I think that's probably the most important thing. And so knowing that each child has different interests and strengths is to give them opportunity. And yes, it can be in a technical field. We're really proud of the fact that with the Cyber Patriots program a few years ago, we were second place in the nation. We have speech and debate, 4-time national winner of speech and debate. And each year we've gotten better and better, and more kids do well. In other areas, the arts, and we celebrate the arts and we appreciate the arts. And so we see that expanding. And so on a fun side note, dancing and theater and yes, even some of the modern things like hip hop, and kids have opportunities for those things. We also want kids to be great writers. And so we are really proud of our writing program and helping to awaken future publishers and writers and novelists. And so trying to really look at where kids are and help them go to that place that makes them shine. And I think that's one of the most important pieces. And I think we offer a plethora of programs. Like sometimes people think, it's, maybe it's just, we're going to help kids that maybe are struggling readers or struggling in the areas of math. No, we provide that plus. So we have kids right now that are in middle school. They're taking college classes, get college credit for it.
Wow.
In a whole variety of subjects. We have middle school kids that are passing AP English, AP Computer Science, which is typically a high school level class, typically juniors at high school. And we have a passing rate that's on par with our neighboring high school district. So we want all kids, wherever they are, to shine, to get better, and to provide those opportunities. And we have kids that are succeeding at levels that are really beyond their years.
We have kids that come to school 7 hours a day. They have stuff involved that they're involved in after school, music programs, art programs, sports programs. And so the kids will leave our school and then they're going until 6, 7 o'clock at night, and then they've got to do their homework. Well, and I think Dr. Bob can talk about this. We were innovative, and the performance academies.
Yeah. So
we talk about the performance academies, which is very unique to even Orange County.
We have a big sports community here, and so we are also aware that parents want to provide opportunities. We have kids that are right now on the junior national team or national team in a variety of different sports, even as 8th graders. And so they need schedules that are flexible so that they can be able to access their extended workout again. And sometimes they compete at not just a national level, sometimes international. Mm-hmm. And so they need schedules that are flexible that allow them to be able to access these kind of elite sports programs that they participate in. And so when we think of kids, we're trying to build programs and give parents choices to give them access to the sorts of education that let their children shine. And so sports is one area where kids and parents have put a lot of energy and time, and we've created something called the Performance Academy that allows kids to access that elite sports.
Mm-hmm. Now, these are all amazing programs, and amazing programs cost amazing amounts of money. excuse my ignorance, but is some of Measure N's money also going to assist with this stuff, or is that more to do with buildings, facility, and things like that?
No, I mean, just if you think about the sports program, our fields have irrigation that is just, it's old. Those pipes, if you were to dig them up, they have holes in it.
Sure.
And when you repair one place, it puts pressure on somewhere else. So if you can think about those facilities just getting improved on the fields, and a lot of less, not as much water wasted when it's not leaking out at certain places. So it's effective, it's efficient. And you can think, yes, obviously the dance rooms and buildings and the gyms and the classrooms and the,
Yeah,
for sure.
Here's just a piece. I mean, we're very proud, and we do have a gymnasium, and it also allows kids to do stage and other performing arts. But one of our schools, and we have at Nicholas, they have an incredible dance teacher there, and she takes kids to a level of expertise that's very high. And there was a moment of sadness. Like, it was at a performance, and she had so many families there. There was no place to put everybody to watch the performance of their kids. And I remember the kids were so proud, and the dance teacher was so proud, and the parents were so proud. But the only place they had to dance was on the asphalt. And we can do better in Fullerton. We are proud of the arts. And so that's an area that both at Nicholas and Parks, that they would get that gym/performing arts center so that our kids can shine. We provide outstanding programs. We have outstanding teachers. We just would love to have the facilities to help match that.
Now, I hate to lower the tone a little bit because obviously we've been positive so far, but I've got another positive after this particular question, so don't worry about it. It's not going to get us all down. But let's face facts here. If Measure N doesn't pass, what does that really mean for you guys?
I think it could be devastating, and it's not that it will happen next year or the year after, but eventually all of these things we talked about, pipes underground, air conditioning, electrical panels, the portables that are at the end of life. The end of life of the portable. It was only intended to do 20 to 30 years. At some point, those things fall. And we have, there's a district in San Diego, and I won't say the district, but they haven't passed anything. And so literally they have holes in the roofs where it's opened up, and they haven't been able to repair them because they don't just need to repair that hole, but they actually need to repair the hole. The plywood, in some cases, they have plywood on the outside of the buildings. So it's a cautionary tale of what happens if we don't invest in the infrastructure, we don't invest in our schools. And the one thing I'm really proud of, and I'm proud of our history in Fullerton, we are a community that has always been visionary. The fact that we had a stop here, a railroad stop in Fullerton, that we have an airport in Fullerton, that we had the first major hotel in all of Orange County, California Hotel, which is now Villa del Sol, by visionary leaders, visionary entrepreneurs, visionary educators.
They started the chamber.
Absolutely. And so want to continue that. We want to be part of that. And so the future would be bleak for our facilities and our buildings, to the point where we could no longer even, again, something like an air conditioning that went out, we couldn't even replace it without the money to also replace the entire roof because of new legal requirements.
And Rob, because this is more your expertise with the business side, what does it do for you?
One of the things I've heard in the community, they'll say things like, why don't you just live within your means? You have a budget. Why don't you use your budget to make all of these repairs? We have over $700 million in need. You divide that by the 20 schools, you're up a lot, 35 million.
Yeah.
One thing we know is the cost of things are going up and up and up. So the problem won't go away, but the cost of an air conditioner today is less than what it will be in 5 years or 10 years or 20, or to upgrade an electrical panel. Our budget allows for it's 3% for routine restricted maintenance. And so of that,
that's
we have
just fixing
That's just
Band-Aid
fixing
stuff?
things. So we
Right.
have maintenance workers. That's about $3 million. And then we have another $3 million that's available to do the repairs when the things happen. An occasional AC unit that goes out or an occasional roof patch that has to happen. Right. That's what that's for. But there just is not the money available in the budget the way that we receive our funding from the state and from property taxes. It's just not. It's not there. And this is the only way to do it. So the question is, what happens if it doesn't? The problem will get bigger. The problem will not go away. This is not something that we can close our eyes, open it, and hope that it goes away. Is it going to happen right away? Probably not. But I feel an obligation to, to pass this bond to make these schools better for this generation of students and also future generations. I think I could probably share the story. I was going through some old documents, the old architect plans, and my director of facilities came up to me. He says, "Hey, Rob, you signed these down here. It says R Redmond Coghlan. What is that? It's 1963. What is that? You weren't born then." And I said, "Oh my gosh, that's my grandfather, who was an architect on many of the schools, who started these schools, and I'm ending my career. I'm not going to work forever.
Sure.
Well, I will work as long as you work, but eventually. And so I want to leave these schools the way that that my grandfather designed them and that they were created for. And so I have a sense of kind of an obligation and a sense of pride that I want to leave these schools better off. So
yeah, we need to find out more about that. That's really cool. So moving on to the more of a highlight part of it is, you mentioned, both of you mentioned actually, how the community really pulls together in Fullerton and how they work, and pioneers and folks have really grown the city the way it is. And, we saw a lot of this during the pandemic. We saw a lot of it with the chamber, with other businesses, but I'm sure you did with the school. Do you want to share a little bit about your experiences during the pandemic?
Sure. I think one of the things, while the pandemic was devastating to our community and nation and even internationally, but one of the good things that came out of it is it really brought our community together. And so there was distance requirements from the state, and those distance requirements that meant that we couldn't put kids in a typical classroom. We couldn't make meals in a typical cafeteria because the workers had to be 6 feet apart. So just to meet the state requirements, we had to come up with innovative ways to deal with that. And so maybe the best innovation is reaching out and connecting a community together. And that's what happened. And so we had a place where we couldn't even make enough food because we couldn't put all of the our nutritionists and cafeteria workers together because of the space requirements. And so we couldn't make enough food for all our kids. And so we went out and we reached out to businesses and restaurants who themselves also were suffering because of space requirements couldn't open. And so what they did is they then provided the food in their kitchens, and we were able to partner with them to feed our families. And we were feeding tens of thousands of families in our community during that, and the local restaurants were a part of that. But not just the restaurants. All these local businesses came together to help so that we could open our schools. And we were open during the pandemic and gave parents choices. But it was because of the strength of our community, the strength of our businesses, the strength that our parents came in, and everybody working together. And so I think the one really great thing that we learned is when we come together, we can do incredible things for our children and our community and our families.
And we saw that with Tiny Home, didn't we? Look how many people jumped on that.
Yeah, they jumped on that, on the feeding the students. This is what I love about Fullerton, and I think Dr. Bob is being modest here, because we found out on March 13th we're going to be closed, and they come to school on Monday. On Tuesday, we were up and running at 17 of our sites, and we were serving every day 5,000 people that didn't even live in Fullerton were coming up to get food. Okay, we're in the middle of a pandemic, and we were feeding them. And then Dr. Bob says, we can do better than this. I don't want to just give cold food. I want to give hot food. What can we do? And then we reached out to the restaurants. And then we said, you know what? There's a grant available for 20 barbecues where we can start barbecuing. And our bus drivers who weren't driving students to school, our instructional aides who weren't in the classroom. They didn't want to sit at home. What can I do? Every school, Dr. Bob was on the line every day, Pacific Drive. We had 20 people working at every school making hot dogs, hamburgers. We were giving hot food to students. And that just speaks to the innovation of the district. And we're also a district, I would say we're a district of choice. We had 50% of our families that said, you know what, I'm not ready to come back to school when it was time.
Right.
I just don't feel comfortable. I want to stay. We understand that. We had 25% that said, I can come every other day in the classroom. We had 25% of our parents that said, I've got to come to work. I've got to go to work.
Sure.
I can't leave my child at home. What can you do? We said, you know what? Send them.
Right.
We will find somewhere that they can Zoom in remotely at the campus. There are districts that didn't do that. There are districts that didn't open.
Yeah,
and
just stay closed.
so
Yeah.
we want to work together with our community, and we want to support them. We're here for them. We need them now for that Measure N.
As we're coming to a close of our podcast, and we always ask our guests this question, is there's often things that maybe we didn't touch on, or maybe we didn't get time to finish off because there was another question fired at you. So we'd like to give you this open mic time. So if you want to start first, Bob.
Sure. So we're known as the education community at university, college, high school, elementary, preschools. And I think one of the reasons why we're known as the education community is we know what that means to change the lives for families. And so it's the reason I got into education. My mother was one of the first people in her entire family to graduate high school, college, get a master's degree, and she went into counseling with that. Her grandmother was one of 8 children. They used to literally walk to school without shoes. My mom told me stories that my grandmother would, their families were so poor, they had to mix sawdust into kind of a flour mix to basically just have some sustenance. Very poor. And my grandmother never finished anything beyond 8th grade, and none of her, and my grandfather also very limited and families. But it was one person, it was Uncle Harold, that said to my mother, you could go on and you could break this cycle of poverty. And he believed in her and encouraged her to get not only her high school, but go on to get her college degree. And as a result of my Uncle Harold encouraging her to go on and get her college degree, it broke the cycle of poverty for our family and for me. And I believe that it was education that helped us give us new opportunities. And so one of the things I want to do and why I got into education was to break those cycles of poverty and give kids an opportunity to see in themselves a future and a way to impact others. And so when we talk about being an education community, we have a community of people that believe that coming together, we give kids our opportunities. We believe in them. We see in them a future to be able to impact and solve problems our community has never been able to do because they bring a new, fresh set of gifts and talents. We're an education community, so proud to be part of it, and happy to be here. Thank you.
That was good. That was very good. I like that story. That was an amazing story. So, Rob, what have you got to say?
Well, I was fortunate enough to grow up in an affluent family. And so I had a lot of great things growing up. And when I went into education, I knew I wanted to share that. I wanted every child to have the experience that I had. And I had worked in some pretty poor districts. And I said, I want better. I want better for every student. Every student deserves the best. And so I understand that. And that's why I'm here. That's why I'm very much in support of Measure N. And voting is 2 weeks from today. I don't know when this is going to air. I'm sure I thought
probably tomorrow.
Or we're live right now, aren't we? And so it's really important that what makes this decision kind of unique, because there's a lot of stuff on the ballot, and you're going to see that Measure N is kind of at the bottom of the ballot. There's some presidential things, I think, at first. I think there's a couple people running for that. And then there's some other senators, some city stuff, and we're down at the bottom. And so I encourage people to go all the way down ballot to look at that, and just know there are going to be people that support this and people that don't. What I encourage everyone to do is to go and vote on November 5th. Whether you support Measure N, and I hope you do, or if you don't, just know that your decision, whether you vote yes or no, it's going to have an impact on the city of Fullerton. You're not making a vote that's going to go to Sacramento and DC, and you'll never know the outcome of it. This could come down to your decision. So I want to encourage everyone. I'm going to look at the camera right there. I want to encourage everybody on November 5th to vote. If you haven't voted already, vote. And I just want to thank you for this opportunity today to come and talk to you a little bit about Measure N, and more importantly, about the Fullerton School District, which is the greatest district on the planet.
There you go. That's even better. There you go. Is that a stab at our superintendent over here?
No, it is. We really want the best. We don't just settle. When we do something right, we say, how can we make it better?
Yeah.
How can we make it better? We're
It's
not
the
just
only way to get better.
Yeah, and we are a very innovative school district, and it's because of the leadership.
Definitely, without a doubt. Well, thank you both for coming on today. Really
Thank
appreciate
you,
it.
Andrew.
Sorry, did you have something to say?
You're
Bob?
looking very dapper, Andrew.
Well, I
love
try.
it.
Yeah. Well, it's keeping up the appearances, you see, in
Yes.
Fullerton. That's what it's all about. So, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for watching Chamber Talk. For more information, please visit nocchamber.com, select podcasts, and you can see all these types of interviews. And also, as Robert just mentioned, it's not just about who you support as a party. It's more important about what's going on in your local home. So please go out there and vote and do the right thing. Thank you very much, gentlemen. Thank you so very much for coming in today.
Thank you.
Thank you.